What's up, everyone? Welcome back to ARTV. My name is John, and it's time for another installment of I Got It Wrong, a series where I admit fault or bias in one of my old reviews. Today I'm going to be re-examining the 2013 album by the indie pop band Vampire Weekend, Modern Vampires of the City. While most fans and critics received Modern Vampires of the City with wide open arms, I wasn't nearly as receptive, as evidenced by my light 3 out of 5 scoring, and the fact that my description in my initial 2013 review painted this portrait of an album that was very bleak, yes, which still kinda holds true of course, but also boring and tedious to listen to. I could not feel more the other way around, doing a complete 180 in present day. In fact, I've been planning to do some sort of redemption review or I Got It Wrong episode for a while now, and as soon as I launched this series, I said to myself, Modern Vampires has to be one of the first 5 episodes, and here we are at episode number 3. I'm doing pretty good. In this series, I Got It Wrong, I like to visualize and give the viewer an interpretation of what I think I was feeling at the time, why I possibly scored the album either so high or so low the first time around. And here, I really don't think that I paid attention to the lyrics all that much. In fact, it feels to me, watching that old review, as cringe-inducing as it is, that I kind of skipped over a lot of things. Maybe I wasn't focusing in on the album. Now, at that time, I had been a fan of Vampire Weekend for a little while. I got into them with the release of their self-titled record unexpectedly, and then ended up loving the majority of Contra. But once we got to Modern Vampires, I don't know what snapped in me or what exactly I was looking for, but I was very dismissive and honestly bitter towards an album that absolutely did not deserve that. Modern Vampires is a very dark record at its core, although it's often showcased as something much brighter musically. Lead vocalist and primary lyricist Ezra Koenig often writes of love on this record, a kind of post-apocalyptic love that feels like a fallout of a relationship that's also painted as the end of the world, and that meticulous feeling kind of lingers and stings throughout these 12 tracks. Another key element on this record is when it veers into religion and we see Ezra questioning things like on Unbelievers, or even the darker track Hudson, where he kind of cries out and talks about how can these events occur? If there's really an omnipotent being out there, show yourself, give us some sort of grand gesture. And as a Christian myself, I think that a lot of people think, oh, you wouldn't want to hear that. You wouldn't want to hear any kind of dissenting opinion or disagreement. That's not true at all. In fact, I've always encouraged debate and differences in musical opinions, so why wouldn't I do the same for religion? Musically though, this record is very tight and often a little bit grandiose. There's just a nice, almost art pop meets indie vibe, which is so sufficient for lack of a better term. It's something that satisfies really any craving that you might have. And while there's a few times when I feel like things are overthought, or maybe there's a bit too much going on lyrically with the complex lines, the double entendres, the other things with the deeper meaning that you constantly feel the need to look into, it is a thoughtful offering that I feel myself coming back to more and more just because the power of the songs themselves, the tightness of the band. And while it's unfortunate that this is the last album that Rostam was an official member for, it's also an appropriate send-off because the closing track, Young Lion, is sung by him. Modern Vampires of the City sets itself aside as an album to be listened to from start to finish. It's a journey, it's an experience, it's a chronicling of a certain time and mindset. I do appreciate that because I love an album that you can really just fall into. It's something where I feel myself gravitating towards certain lyrics and certain musical bits, maybe the chomp of a guitar, or maybe the choir effect that's going in the background. There's a lot of songs that might feel a bit too much, maybe a bit too grandiose, but I find myself coming back because of the band's chemistry. I really think the songwriting here is the best that they've presented to date. I know we're on the cusp of a new studio album, Father of the Bride, but this record is certainly a feat in songwriting. There's so many lines here that are very complex, and as I mentioned, at times it can feel like maybe a distraction because you want to immediately look into and see what is this line, or what exactly was he meaning there again? I don't feel that's the fault of Ezra or the rest of the band though. Maybe it's just me, and I feel the need to be a little bit more curious and meticulous when looking into things. It's sometimes difficult for a band to capture the feelings of both depth but also catchiness, and these songs remain relevant because they do balance the world so well. There are the more upfront tracks that you're going to gravitate towards immediately. That's why they released Step and Diane Young as the double single right away. But of course you've got the other tracks like Hudson and perhaps Worship You that are a little bit more out there, a little bit more difficult to digest at first, but once you sit with this record in its entirety for a good while, like I obviously have, and the majority of you watching probably have at this point, 6 years after its release, it's more rewarding the more that you listen. Obvious Bicycle is a great starting point for this record. It's something that immediately captures and sets the mood for what this album is going to be, the journey that you're about to set out on, and I love the pianos and Ezra's higher registering vocals on this track. Everlasting Arms has a kind of sardonic twist to it. It seems like it is questioning of religion and kind of mocking certain elements of it, and I love the stomping drum on this one and the way that it gives a slow burn into the chorus. I think some people maybe have trouble with the catchier tracks like Fingerback and also Ya Hey, which do have more complex themes in them than what meets the eye, but I feel that they can be a bit grating, a bit annoying, and I understand that, but honestly for me, especially Fingerback, it's something that's so snappy, quick, and off the top of the head almost, that it just feels like something that I come back to for a reason. Diane Young still holds up amazingly well to this day. It's something that I've been singing at the top of my lungs every time that it comes on for years now, and I don't see that stopping anytime soon. It's a great play on the dying young phrase, except they didn't want to put out anything too dark in the title, I guess, because people don't want to sing dying young. Oh god, that sounds awful. So we'll package it as Diane Young. And it's just so fast, so quick moving, but there's also all of these dark themes and overwhelming thoughts of depression that I love it. The contrast is amazing. My favorite Vampire Weekend song is found on this album. Hannah Hunt is that track. I feel that it's still somehow underrated, even though I know it's somewhat popular, it's somewhat well known, at least in the indie realm and community. I wish it would spread even further beyond that because it's such an emotional dagger through the heart. It describes this relationship that's falling apart and the trust that is lost and how they're trying to fan the flames, and it describes how they're out on this beach, and it does feel very bleak, like colorless almost. Everything is washed out. And these two people are together. Maybe perhaps they're people that we've heard about in other places on the record. Maybe they're just two strangers. And Ezra described that he got the name Hannah Hunt from a girl that he sat next to in class. And it's something where I feel every single word here, especially once he finally gets to after the little piano breakdown. If I can't trust you, then damn it, Hannah, when he's really selling you and hooking you. This track is phenomenal, probably in my top 100 songs of all time. I also have to mention Don't Lie. I love the musicality of that track and the obvious presentation, the confrontation of the lyrics. Don't lie, don't be a liar, that's not a good thing. But the deep bass on this one and the way that everything comes together, it just kind of feels like the perfect subdued storm that is on the brink of something but never quite pushes itself over the edge. Hudson is an incredible, towering, dark track that feels ominous at its core, like it's working towards something, and it's also a sign of dedication, as Ezra talks about not changing his colors or his stripes and remaining true to who he is. The closing moment, Young Lion, which is sung by Rostam, is another nice moment. It talks about an interaction that they had with a man who stopped him, Ezra that is, and says, "Hey, Young Lion, slow down, you don't need to be going so fast," and then they turned it into a song, and the piano here and everything. It just feels like the perfect little send-off for this release. For those of you who saw my initial review, you'll definitely take note of how much my opinions have evolved over time. It's something that I feel I overlooked and truly did get wrong. I didn't give enough thought to the lyrics and I didn't give enough appreciation for the process. It's an album that I now rate a 4.5 out of 5. Let me know your thoughts on Modern Vampires of the City. Have your thoughts evolved over time? Do you like it more or do you like it less? Let me know any thoughts and why in the comment section down below. Don't forget to drop a like on this video, and thank you for tuning into this episode of I Got It Wrong. If you want to see the last episode that I did on the Strokes, then tap right here or tap here for another recent review. All of my social media can be found in the links in the description down below, and other than that, don't forget to subscribe for the love of music, and I'll see you soon on ARTV.